Hello, stream! Welcome to the Vol'Jin Lorecast, where I'm joined with Vince.
Hello. Do I also have to do the big hello stream with over-the-top enthusiasm?
I mean, would you like to try and top my enthusiasm? Do you think you
I shall attempt, but I'm afraid that won't be very easy. So let's have a crack at it. Hello stream, and welcome to the Lorecast about Vol'Jin. This is going to be the best Lorecast ever. Every Lorecast before this turned out to be nothing. So voila, get ready to get your socks rocked.
Okay, you win. Right. So, this Lorecast is different to the past two because I didn't pick the topic. Vince picked the topic. Well, he gave me a selection and I picked out 3. So, Vince, what do you find so interesting about the leader of the Darkspear tribe?
Well, one of the main reasons I think he's is because in my opinion, he's one of the most well-rounded characters in the WoW lore.
Yeah.
Because he has quite a broad and extensive history in terms of what he's done throughout his life, what he's experienced throughout his life, and probably where he's going as well. In that sense, like to me, in terms of like just lore-wise, he's like almost up there with the big names like Thrall, for example. Yeah. Otherwise known as Green Jesus. So that's like one of the main things, because he's just so there's so much that he's done, so much that he's experienced, and that's like one of the main reasons. And yeah, that's the first reason. And I think the second reason is also because right now in Shadowlands it's clear, or at least there are strong indications that Vol'Jin is getting quite a bit of development and might actually play a role going forward in Shadowlands in terms of maybe the raids, in terms of the lore itself, and so on. So that's one of the main things. And he's also like, he's a badass shadow hunter. I mean, former war chief, all these kinds of things he's done. Yeah, he's just badass in general.
Yeah. There's just loads of good qualities of Vol'Jin. He's got like, he doesn't have the most stories out of all the characters in the game, but the ones he does have, I think are really quite interesting in comparison to some of the bigger names. Like, if you look at his story of how he became a shadow hunter, he went through the trials of the lower, originally with his best mate Zalazane, and as he progressed through these trials, there were like, loads of different challenges that tested who he was as a character. One which really stood out to me was where the lower gave him a choice of having the easy life of chilling and having everything he desired for, or the other where he kind of had more freedom but had to fight for it in a way. And you know, Vol'Jin's choice was the one where he went for fighting for his freedom instead of having everything easy for him. Which
that's all those tries. Like one thing that I find very interesting is like if just the trials that he took in order to become a shadow hunter. If you compare some of those, if you compare those trials as a whole, it really signifies like the choices that he makes later on as well. Like it's somehow like not all, but lots of the choices that he makes, you can actually reduce down to the choices that he made when becoming a shadow hunter. And also and maybe that's also always a bit forgotten, I guess. But also some of the choice that he made before actually becoming a shadow hunter, like just the simple choice that he made where he decided, okay, I need to become a shadow hunter because Daddy Sanjin says so. But I think I'm gonna be stronger. I'm gonna have more chance of succeeding or getting through that whole thing if I do it together with Zalazane. Like simply that choice because he could have just said, okay, I'm gonna handle this solo and I'm gonna go in there. No, he actively chose to do it together with Zalazane. Yeah. Perhaps the unfortunate consequences that brought, but that choice in itself already says, to me, said a lot about who Vol'Jin is as a character.
Yeah, and what another story I find really interesting about Vol'Jin is of course him and Zalazane were best mates during their youth. They did just about everything together, and seeing the whole story where Zalazane then kind of betrayed Vol'Jin, the whole Darkspear tribe, to take over Echo Isles. I just thought that it was quite interesting in comparison to many other stories you'd get, especially since they even got Bwonsandi, the Lord of Death himself, to intervene with that little civil war they had.
Yeah, but that was for a good reason, right? Because Zalazane was basically going to steal from Bwonsandi, and we all know how Bwonsandi feels about stealing his toys, I guess. So, and he's also the patron Loa of the Darkspear. So if there is one, or at least that was what he was. If there was one Loa that would intervene, it would probably have been Bwonsandi. So. Yeah, but the whole Zalazane thing is like I remember the first time that I was reading basically reading up on Vol'Jin, and that was, I think, when I first finished Warcraft 3, I think.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to know, okay, who is this Vol'Jin dude? And there was already some lore available back then. And basically, one of the interesting things there is that, because Vol'Jin is the son of Sanjin, right? Sanjin was the leader of the Darkspears. Yeah, the original chieftain. And because of that, at least in the lore, you can find that basically all of the Darkspear trolls considered Vol'Jin to be this quote-unquote hero, or basically good guy, strong guy, whatever.
Yeah.
And Zalazane was like his sidekick, basically. One was Superman, one was Batman, and the other was Robin, basically.
Yeah.
Indeed, and as soon as I read that, the first bell that rang is, okay, crap. Zalazane is gonna do something. That never happened until we finally got to the story of Zalazane's betrayal. But go ahead.
With all these little storylines where one character appears to be vastly superior to the other, the inferior character usually does tend to want to go and get that power grab and get the fame that they want, which is, I think, exactly the sort of line that Zalazane went down.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting, about the fact that because also in that story, and during the trials of the Shadow Hunter, Vol'Jin got a vision of what would happen to his people, and Zalazane also got one. And we basically also know that Vol'Jin was shown that at one point he would have to fight Zalazane, because of the two different futures thing. But what was interesting to me is Vol'Jin keeps, and throughout, even all the way until the end, Vol'Jin keeps trying to convince Zalazane of get back to the good side. kind of like Obi-Wan basically with Anakin in Star Wars.
Yeah.
And that is pretty interesting because Zalazane is death aligned, right? And what I'm starting to feel, because they brought Zalazane back like two or three times.
Yeah.
And what I'm starting to feel is in this whole like Shadowlands redemption, or well, maybe we'll get into that later. But what is going to happen to Vol'Jin? I have a feeling that Zalazane at one point is also going to have to play a role in that, and it's like going to give Vol'Jin like that last final nudge or something that he needs, and like give Zalazane that redemption story, because now he's just a villain basically.
Yeah.
And if he now gets that redemption story, that would be like the ultimate like Star Wars twist again, that I think would actually fit both of them quite well, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely the potential for some sort of storyline involving the Darkspear, seeing as there's a whole dungeon based around Bronsamdi. Like,
Yeah, indeed.
We're literally there to free the guy and let him work his magic on Mazala. But
yeah, it's completely. That is definitely true. And the interesting thing about the other side, and like when I first heard the name, the other side is in the dungeon, I was like, I remember this. And in BF, was it in BFA? I think it's in BFA where Bonsamdi actually tells Vol'Jin, or was it even before that? I'm not entirely sure anymore, but it's one of the last two expansions.
I think it was BFA, because there was that whole quest line of Vol'Jin trying to find out who told him to make Sylvanas war chief in BFA.
Yeah, it could have been there, but I just remember that at one point, they talked to Bonsamdi.
Yeah.
And Bonsamdi then somehow literally says to Vol'Jin, "I'll be waiting for you on the other side."
Yeah.
And then was like, okay. So that was a pretty interesting tidbit of a nice, let's say, lore piece, I would say.
Yeah, but that has been references to the other side. I think even since there was definitely one in Kata, because I recently went and rewatched the little quest line in which Vol'Jin and the Darkspear took back Echo Isles from Zalazane. And there was some mention between Bonsamdi and Zalazane talking about the other side. I don't remember exactly what it was though, but it does state.
Yeah, I think it's in reference when Bonsamdi confronts Zalazane.
Yeah.
Then he mentions to Zalazane somehow that that they need to go to the other side or something.
Yeah.
Because the Darkspear Troll are under his caretaking, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Vol'Jin, of course, leader of the Darkspear tribe. Going back to his trials, the one I mentioned earlier, where he had to make that choice of his freedom. It's very representative of how Vol'Jin is a character of strong will, and if you look at the later history of the Darkspear tribe, I don't know what patch it was. I think it was Cataclysm again, the Rise of the Zandalari patch. That cinematic you get, where the Zandalari, the Amani, I think the Drakari as well,
and the Gurubashi as well, yeah, and one. Yeah, and there's one tribe that isn't identified, or at least not actively identified.
Yeah, could have been something like the Sand Fury or whatever's in Tanaris.
Yep, the Sand Fury trolls. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the Darkspear, and All the troll tribes except for one accept the Zandalari's offer of reuniting and waging war upon the whole of Azeroth to rebuild the once great troll empire. And the one tribe that refuses is the Darkspear, due to their loyalty to the Horde.
Well, I don't think it's just obviously it has to do with Vol'Jin being the chieftain and being who he is, like choosing his friends to go along with, because the Amani, the Gurubashi, they're all not allies. And the Horde is, because the Horde has helped them out quite a bit, especially in the beginning of the troll history, of at least the Darkspear troll history. So he actively makes that choice, but I think it also has a lot to do with the fact that like if the Gurubashi basically ever since is it Zul'Gurub? Yeah, Zul'Gurub.
Yeah.
Their fame, their glory went down. The Amani went down. The Zandalari themselves also, up until when we got reintroduced to them in BFA. Like all of those tribes have had their glory taken from them, or at least their glory has faded. Whilst the Darkspear have actually flourished, or more or less flourished under, let's say, the banner of the Horde.
Yeah. They're the one tribe that kind of, they found their group and they just got stronger and stronger.
Exactly, indeed.
I think the original history of the Darkspear was that they were jungle trolls, much like the Gurubashi, but they separated themselves from the rest of the Gurubashi. It could have been maybe from the Sundering or something like that, or maybe they were outcasts from Stranglethorn Vale. But that's what actually caused the Darkspear tribe to be formed. Is that they left the Gurubashi and went on their own path.
Yeah, I think it had more to do with what was it? With the choice that the Gurubashi made at one point to start using blood magic. So the whole link to Hakar.
Yeah.
Because if I remember correctly, Sen'jin and some trolls obviously did not agree with that use, and therefore also they chose to stay with their allegiance to death, basically. So in that respect, to a certain extent, Bwansamdi and Muzala. So I think if I remember, it had something to do basically with the choices that were being made, and that's certain trolls didn't agree with the choices that we made, and that also harkens back to, like, it's interesting to see how these patterns come back, because that harkens back to basically Vol'Jin's let's say behavior during Garrosh's reign. Because I guess, and that's also one of the reasons that I think Vol'Jin is so interesting, because he has that whole history of being one of the elder races, being one of the trolls being one of the elder races at the very least, and having that entire history of already conflict and choices and more morality and so on, and having all that history as a lesson, and then him as a character, like being able to use that those history lessons and actually applying it in order for the betterment of, well, in first instance, I guess, the Darkspear trolls, but then as a second instance, the Horde.
Yeah, because Vol'Jin was the main character who actually went against Garrosh when Garrosh was doing wrong.
Yeah, indeed, and there again, like in all of the choices that he makes, if you remember, when Garrosh first came into power, he made some, let's say, quote-unquote questionable decisions, and Vol'Jin would openly criticize Garrosh, but at the same time, he would say, "Look, I'm not going to openly oppose you. I will criticize you, but I will not oppose you, because I know because I think and I know that your intentions are benign." and that's like, and that again reflects like the fact that he stands with his friends and his loyalty to the Horde and to his friends, but at the same time, you know, being a shadow hunter again, and like being the prime example of a shadow hunter, looking out for what's hidden in the shadows, and keeping an eye out for what's hidden. That is pretty interesting.
Well, one part of the whole of Vol'Jin's opposition to Garrosh in Pandaria, I quite like, is that even at that point, where Garrosh had sent Vol'Jin on a mission to discover the connections between the Sarok and the Mogu. As soon as Vol'Jin had discovered that the Sarok were flesh-shaped creations from the Mogu's magic, and the Orc assassin general, whatever he was, and the other orcs which outnumbered him, had said, we're gonna use this magic for ourselves. Even to that point where Vol'Jin knew if he spoke out something would happen, he still stuck to his morals and said, no, we shouldn't use this cursed magic. Dark magic is good.
Yeah, but I you know, let's say, I guess that's also in part due to the fact that he's seen what like corruption can do to people. Since Zalazane as a prime example, and also just during war times, because he's like, that's also one of the things, like, people sometimes underestimate a bit how much war, like, some of the main characters of the Horde leaders have seen.
Yeah.
Like, and Vol'Jin being one of the few that has, like, he was there from the beginning, and he's seen every war, and until his death. Where some of the other leaders, like Thrall at one point, you know, after Garrosh decided, fuck it, I'm stepping out. Sylvanas saw war as the Banshee Queen only until the point where she got her, like, let's say, her humanity or her elven manity, or whatever you want to call it, back, to whatever degree that is up for discussion, I guess.
Yeah.
But like, he's literally seen war from its prime beginnings to like now. So
yeah,
that is, that makes him, I think that makes him like the ideal candidate to be to point out the flaws, and to say, look, this is where, and to put his finger on the wound and say, look, this is a bad idea, and let's not do this.
Yeah, so speaking of the past wars that Vol'Jin has been in, he was one of the earliest leaders of the Hordes. Because, I mean, he was involved in the very start of the Hordes with Thrall and Chen Stormstyle.
Yeah, he's one of the founding members of the Horde, yep.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact story behind that, but it does just
the story is basically the story of Warcraft 3, right? Where the orcs come to Kalimdor, and at one point they come close to the Echo Isles, and there they first meet Vol'Jin, and that's where Vol'Jin tells I think it's Thrall that he meets first, and he says to Thrall, welcome to our lands, blah blah blah, and then he tells him of the problems that they have with the Naga, because the Naga were the first to basically oust them from their home. And that's where then Thrall offered his help to clear it out, and that's how they basically became became friends and decided to work together.
Yeah. That rings a bell.
Yeah, because I remember during that campaign, you're asked to if I remember correctly, it's maybe not 100% correct, but you're asked to help out to clear out a number of spots on in and around the Echo Isles, so that you can launch an attack again.
Yeah. Kind of claim back the Isles for the Dark Spear.
Yeah, indeed. And like one thing about that whole formation story is that I've always wondered, and I couldn't like find any direct references to it. Is like, okay, who was it actually that asked help of Thrall? Because I mean, we know that Vol'Jin is often consulted by the Loa, and as a primary example, Sandi, but he's gotten visions and advice from almost all of the Loa that we know. Shadra's been in there, Sandi's been in there. I think it's not Hyreek, it's one. There's a couple of
Bat Loa.
Yeah, he's a Bat Loa indeed. I think what was his official title? Is it not Loa of Lies or something? I think it is, and Shadra is Loa of Spies or something.
I thought Shadra was Loa of Lies. I don't
It's Spies or Lies that Shadra is then, but Hyreek In any case, like my question was always, okay, could it have been possible that Sandi or one of the Loa went to Vol'Jin and basically whispered into his ear, like, tomorrow there's gonna be this strange green dude on a wolf, and he's the one to help you? Because if that would be the case, then you could somehow like start making an argument for the fact that that basically the Loa as a whole, or maybe with Sandi as a centerpiece, have been planning the formation of the Horde, and that they actually want to kind of, in a sense, use the Horde to, or that they were planning on using the Horde for something, and maybe that has something to do with Ardenweald or something later. It's always like an aspect that I found, because we know that Sandi actively listens to the Loa and often, if not always, follows their advice or their whispers or their instructions. So, it's like somehow it feels, and also the fact that the Zandalari trolls are an allied race to the Horde. Maybe that was like the Loa's idea of, okay, let's get the Zandalari back in line. So we need to make a Horde or something of that sort. It's always something that I've been wondering, whether or not the Loa had a role to play in the formation of the Horde or not.
They might have done. But then maybe wouldn't the Loa have had a role to play in like many of the other following events, like the whole civil war in the Horde, or even maybe the Legion invasion, where Vol'Jin was ultimately defeated? Wouldn't they have?
Well, we know. That it's highly likely, because we know now officially. We know that Muzala has been, on behalf of the jailer, obviously, but has been influencing events ever since the very beginning of World of Warcraft. The original references in was it Zul'Farrak, I think?
Yeah.
Or close to Zul'Farrak to Muzala.
Sand area, right?
Yeah, indeed, the sand area. So we know that probably indeed they have some hand in it somewhere or somehow. But yeah, my point there is just that all throughout Vol'Jin's lore, we can clearly see that the Loa are like offering him wisdom and trying to remind him of certain things. and yeah, it almost feels like each time the Loa were like not just grooming Vol'Jin for something, but yeah, it sounds wrong, but
That's
like
the funniest terminology for it.
yeah, or like preparing him for like things, and like using him as an instrument through which they could execute their will on Earth, on Azeroth, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm not quite sure what else to say on Vol'Jin now.
Well, one of the things that I really enjoy about Vol'Jin, is he throughout his history, in the beginning he's a troll, right? He's a troll 100%. Then he meets the Horde, and he becomes he's still a troll with his own vision and so on, but he becomes more of a, let's say, an advisor, a supporter, etc. And so he does all of that, and like at one point, and I think is that in Mists, I think, or is it after? So after the attempt to assassinate him by Garrosh.
Oh yeah.
That is Mists indeed. After his assassination attempt, he's like found by Taranzu.
Yeah.
Of the Shadowpan. And he's actually like, he begins training in basically the way the Shadowpan live. Yeah, the monk life basically. And what's interesting is because before, if you look before that, he was an advisor, he was a leader, but he was, let's say, somewhat limited, and then he gets this, like, let's say, training, and during that training, obviously, he befriends a human. I forgot the name now of the dude, but anyways, he goes through this change in which, like, before that, he was a balanced character, but balanced insofar that it had something to do with the Horde. With respect to the Alliance, he was basically a good commander, a good sort of general, but he didn't quite know let's say, the Alliance, if you have to put it like that.
Yeah.
Not in the way that, for example, Troll from his captivity and so on, and the friends that Troll made there. So not in that same way. He was a Horde character, and during his whole trials and regaining his strength, having to let go of his doubts, let go of his fears, etc., all of those things, like that entire evolution was so remarkable, because it's a typical story of, like, in the beginning they're forced by Taranzu to work together and to learn to get to know each other. And in the beginning, in a sense they want to kill each other, but after a while they become friends, and then they understand indeed the Alliance and Horde can be friends, they can work together, but they also realize at the same time that it's too early for that, and that not a lot of people will understand. And so just that whole point, not just for him to morally grow, but also in terms of power. Because one of like the like show moments that he has in during his training by Taranzu is where he needs to chop a rock in two with his bare hands. And he can only do that by letting go of his doubt. That's like, okay, if you can chop a piece of rock in two with just your bare hands, then you're badass.
Indeed.
So yeah, so that whole evolution of Vol'Jin under the Shadowpan, because as soon as the Pandaren were brought in, like, one of the first things that was clear was, like, the Pandaren are like this. They are basically about balance, in a sense. Like, knowing that there's evil and there's good, and there's a balance to be had, and lots of beer obviously as well. But that Vol'Jin was able to learn that lesson is also pretty interesting, especially in the context of what's happening to him now. And obviously, we can get into that a little later, I guess. But I think that whole experience, just for his character and just for who he is and what he was and what he can mean and meant to the story, because in the end, he was there for the formation of the Horde. He was there when the Legion invaded. Like he's played pivotal roles. He was one of the strike leaders together with, was it Cairn or Bane? I think it was Bane when they attacked Terramore. All these kinds of things. So he's like had key roles in a lot of things, a lot of important events. And just his whole development is clearly centered around being that strong yet balanced leader that any, let's say, any sort of government that has a more democratic form needs. Someone to point out that there's something wrong, but at the same time can show, okay, if something is wrong, well, I will come with you into the darkness and we'll solve it together. Stuff like that.
Going on about that, I feel like kind of links into how Vol'Jin is very willing to make sacrifices in order to better help his allies. Like you first see that in his trials to become a shadow hunter. One of the trials leave it so that his thumb will be permanently damaged and he wouldn't be able to throw a weapon with that hand.
Yeah, specifically a spear.
Yeah, and so that he could still be an effective fighter for his people, he took the sacrifice to chop off his own thumb so he could properly regenerate it. Then you also see it later on in the story. This, when it comes down to, say, the Broken Shore, he was straight in there on the fight against the demons to the point where he sacrificed himself for the Horde to at least try to make a stand.
Yeah, no, that's indeed true, and that's well, as we already mentioned, I think that's one of the pivotal characteristics of Vol'Jin, is that his willingness to sacrifice for the greater good, but not to the point where it becomes morally reprehensive. It's just so, like, he has this especially, let's say his most recent version has this balance of morality. And like, if you look at, let's say, most of the Horde leaders, there's like each of them sort of represents an archetype, right? And he is like and Vol'Jin is like the archetype of, let's say, the one that makes compromise, but not at the cost of morality, or not at any cost. He knows that there's a limit to he knows that you have to sacrifice, but he knows that there's a limit to what you can sacrifice in order to make the whole better before you make the whole worse. So that's pretty interesting. And also, like, one of the points about Vol'Jin, especially, it's all like in the context of the current story that's going on. That was also very interesting. Is like not just his connection to Loa, because as we've already said, like he has been contacted by quite a few Loa, at least that we know of, and he often listens to their advice.
But he also has
not only that,
to his people.
Yeah, indeed, he has a very strong connection to his people as well. So he is, in a sense, he's sort of the model troll, right? Or at least the ideal, let's say, Darkspear troll, because that's also like one of the points. At one point, where Bonsandi actually tells the other Loa to, or at least that's what's hinted at, is that Bonsandi tells the other Loa to give visions to to Vol'Jin, and Bonsandi then at the end of that literally says to Vol'Jin, look, the main reason I've been doing this is because I want to remind you what it means to be a troll.
Yeah.
And what you should stand for being a troll. And
I mean,
like during that whole during that whole connection, that strong connection that he has to the Loa.
yeah.
And now I'm gonna make like a triple connection here. So the Loa, we know, are connected to Ardenweald.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we know that Ardenweald is also very strongly connected to Druidism. So the Druids as a whole. And one of the interesting things is at one point, and I think it's at the end when you kill Zalazane, when Bonsandi kills Zalazane, there's a troll there, and she's one of the Druid trainers.
Yeah.
She literally tells Vol'Jin, from now on my life is intertwined with yours. And so that whole thing gives me the feeling that that Vol'Jin, as he was a linchpin during his life within the Horde, like trying to get everyone together, trying to be the balance, be the voice of reason, be the voice of criticism as well, that we're now setting him up to be a linchpin, let's say, in Ardenweald as well, because he has this connection to the Loa, and we know that the Winter Queen doesn't quite like the Loa. We know she also doesn't quite like Ysera, so probably we know that Ysera's we know it's very probable that Ysera being the former aspect of dreams and so on, that she has a connection to the Druids. She has a connection probably to the Loa as well, and so like it feels to me that given these connections, and that Vol'Jin indeed, because in the latest questline that you got this week as an Ardenweald Covenant, like the Winter Queen specifically says like to Vol'Jin that he's special, that he's different, and not And there's one more point that I want to connect to this, but before I do, I want to come to my, let's say, the part of conclusion, is that it feels to me like he is a mortal, and obviously the Winter Queen doesn't hate mortals. She needs them, she accepts them, but she doesn't quite like the Loa, she doesn't quite like Ysera, and like Vol'Jin feels like the perfect match to get the Winter Queen to reconcile with the Loa and to reconcile with Ysera and maybe her sister, because it feels like there's something there, and then bringing it all together and basically creating this one big, let's say, Ardenwealdy front. Yeah. Because not only that, if you remember when Vol'Jin, so when he died, and we go along with him to the different death aspects. So we went to the Lich King, we went to Aegir, and to Bonsandi. Yeah. When we go to Aegir, she says two very interesting things, which I think almost everyone knows. So the first that she says is, so the hand that brought you back, and the one that whispered that Sylvanas should be war chief, are two different people. Yeah. And we know that one of those two is Muzala, so he's the one that whispered. That's been confirmed, or at least by Muzala himself. Yeah. So that's the first interesting piece of information. The second interesting piece of information is that she says, "You've been touched by the hand of valor." And if we take that literally, the hand of valor, and we look at the color that Vol'Jin has right now, he's not bluish, he's not greenish, he's goldenish.
So he's been revived. Well, kind of his spirit's been reincarnated by Odin.
Well, no, because if it was Odin, then Aegir would know. But you're very close, I think. Yeah. I think there's a lead into Bastion there. And why do I think that? The reason I think that is because so you have the Paragon, so the leader of Bastion, and what are all yeah, the Archons are the Archon. And what are all her paragons called? The Hand of Justice, the Hand of, the Hand of, the Hand of,
Yeah.
or the Paragon of, something like that.
Yeah.
So could it be that that was one of the Bastion paragons, or even maybe just the Archon herself, that actually brought Vol'Jin back? Because you know, the whole golden color scheme doesn't quite fit with Ardenweald. It fits far better with Bastion
But then again,
than it does with.
if you think about it, Bastion, it doesn't properly fit with Bastion, because Bastion is blue. There's really not that much gold. I think if there was a place in the Shadowlands where he would fit, it would be the Halls of Valor, because that's where you see the gold, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, it feels like it has something to do with either like Titanic or Bastion, because they all share that similar theme. And I mean, they specifically say, or the AU specifically says the Hand of Valor, so she must know, or at least have an idea of where the origin is. And as we know, the Valkyr, okay, since the whole Odin thing is more related to the Titans, but the Valkyr are more related to the Shadowlands and to Bastion. So in that respect, it feels. Yeah, indeed. So indeed they are that. So it feels to me that there is a connection there, where not only Vol'Jin could be the uniter of Ardenweald, or or at least bring the different factions within Ardenweald together. He could also be the connection to Bastion, via the Hand of Valor. Not only that, because you know, if you look at the Maldraxxus story quests, the Maldraxxus, you know, they help Bastion, and then at one point, was it this week or last week, we went to Revendrat, right? To do some stuff there as well, with Keltis and Kel'Thuzad and all these kinds of things. So it's clear that somehow the story is moving towards sort of a unification of the Shadowlands against the Jailer or against someone else or whatever.
Vol'Jin is very well known for being one who unites people against a common threat, especially if you look at his main life. He united the troll people in the lower to fight against Zalazane. He united the hordes to go against Garrosh. He united the hordes and kind of the Alliance to fight the Legion on the Broken Shore. And now it looks like he's set up for the best spot to unite the lower, the Emerald Dream, and the Winter Queen, Ardenweald, together, and then potentially go on further as an envoy to reach out to the other covenants.
Yep, indeed. It's like there seems to be a lot of evidence pointing towards those things. Also because and that's maybe the last bit of information I'll put in this let's say theory in a sense, or speculation, is the fact that also in the latest quest line, we meet Razan, and we know Razan was the Loa of Kings, and he gives the last of his essence to Vol'Jin, which implies that Vol'Jin will become the Loa of Kings, right? And what does a king do? A king rules, leads, inspires, all these kinds of things. So maybe his role as a Loa of Kings will not just be to obviously guide the Troll Kings and whatever kings and queens of Azeroth, but also to actually be a king of some sort, or to be that leadership role that currently seems that looks like that could be needed, kind of like the Primus was in the past. You know, the Primus of Maldraxxus, he was the one that all. Yeah, he unified the 5 houses, but not only that, he was respected also by by his brethren. So yeah, by the first ones, and like from what you can hear based on that, it feels like the Primus was like the wisest of them, the leader of them. So in that respect, like he could take, like Vol'Jin could take up that role of, let's say, the new kind of Primus in that sense.
I see. He could be the one that would actually unite everyone against the jailer.
He could be one at least one of the people, but he could indeed be the one that, major role, or the one that inspires this. Since he has all of the qualities of a king, of a leader, of someone that inspires, like what would you call an inspirational leader? And all these kinds of things. And it just feels like all throughout his history, that is always what it's come down to. That is what he is. That is who he is, as a character. So yeah, I mean, and just the fact that Bwonsandi is in a sense using Vol'Jin as well a bit to try and get something done, also feels like that is something that Bwonsandi wants, or maybe Bwonsandi wants something completely different. But it looks like there's something that is brewing for Vol'Jin in terms of like having a center role in at least one major event.
Yeah, I reckon there's big things in store for Vol'Jin.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just like, and it's not just it's not just his role right now. So we're getting all this story development around him, his interactions with Muzala, the other Loa, and like bringing the Loa, because he's partly done that as well. Because when you go into the Maw with him, he's the one that senses the other Loa, and he's like, crap, there's a Loa there, we need to go get them, we need to go save them. Even though one of those Loa, Hyreek, so the bat Loa, is actually a traitor
he sided with Gahun, didn't they?
Yeah, indeed he did. And in that respect, it like he in a sense it's like, okay, even though he's a traitor, he still saved them. He could have just said, no, leave Hyreek here. He deserves it, but he still saved him and still brought him to the Winter Queen. So his role is clearly that one of a reconciler, of a unifier, and so on. So
yeah. Unless you have anything else to add.
Maybe just one last point that is pretty interesting on Vol'Jin is, so we've talked about his role as a leader, as an inspirer, etc., and what that might mean for the Shadowlands going forward, and what it has meant for Azeroth in the past. One of the interesting things that I'm looking forward to a lot, to be fair, is his new power set. Because he went from being a shadow hunter to being a shadow hunter / monk / warrior kind of guy / something like that. And now it feels like his new power set could include like shamanistic druidic features, given his new role. So I'm really looking forward to the new power set that he's going to have.
I mean, we all know it's just going to be Convoke the Spirits, but now it includes his Touch of Karma, Storm, Earth, and Fire. Just anything OP from the other classes.
To be very fair, if you could Convoke the Spirits and have like two Touch of Karmas in those 12 spells, you'd fucking murder shit. You'd literally murder shit. I mean, one Touch of Karma is already tons of damage, but imagine getting 2 of those in a row. I mean, that would make druids even, or if it's him, okay.
It just creates a Vol'Jin class. where he's
It
like
creates a whole new class, yeah.
a warrior, druid, monk, shadow hunter. He just uses rallying cry and touch of death to instantly one-shot everything he comes across.
That would be pretty interesting, yeah, indeed. Yeah, there are still some other questions that I have around basically Vol'Jin's history. Like during his time as war chief, you know, he also made quite a few interesting decisions.
Yeah.
And like just the role of the Loa, the role of what this Hand of Valor would be, because I mean, if let's not name it now, but if this Hand of Valor brought him back, that is saved him, then that is for a reason. And depending on who it exactly is, or what it exactly is that brought him back, then the question is, okay, how much did the Loa influence him throughout all of the decisions that he's made, and how much would this Hand of Valor actually have something to say about who he was, what choices did he make, and what were the reasons for those choices?
Just influenced by the Loa, but also by this Hand of Valor.
Yeah, potentially the Loa we have relatively confirmed, but this Hand of Valor, yeah, you won't save someone without a proper reason, whether that is selfish or whether that's altruistic, but you won't do it without a proper reason. And if you were aware of, if that Hand of Valor was, if you saved them, that implies that they were aware of Vol'Jin's existence and what Vol'Jin could mean, which also means that, given, you know, the tendency of all of the higher powers, including the Titans, the Old Gods, the Void Lords, whatever, all of those powers, the tendency to manipulate the mortals, then I wouldn't be surprised that the Hand of Valor, at one point we get this revelation that the Hand of Valor is, for example, someone in Bastion, and that he or she has been guiding Vol'Jin in his mortal life on the path as well, and that had a reason, so that he now could understand the path or something that would give him the tools or the knowledge that he needs in order to further his role as the new Loa of Kings or the Unifier or whatever.
Yeah. Either that, or, you know, it's just Vol'Jin being a true Darkspear, and, you know, Darkspear never die.
Darkspear never die, yeah. But like that whole the whole point about unification, because I also thought about it during one of our, I think it was during the last Lorecast, or the one before that. Yeah, the Shadowlands one, where, you know, I don't know who it was, but that gave that really nice, let's say, rendition of the book that was found, in which it clearly shows that let's say, at least someone in Revendreth was creating discord between the different, let's say, Azerothian or Universal factions.
Yeah.
Because the only cure for division is unification, and
Vol'Jin is looking.
Vol'Jin might be a candidate
against division.
Yeah, maybe indeed. Maybe he's the cure for the problem, and maybe the Hand of Valor knew about it earlier on and was like, okay, I can't stop it now, but I know someone who can, so let's help him and let's prepare him, let's save him, and let's get it done that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, well, that is the lore behind Vol'Jin. So, thanks to everyone who's tuned in to the Lorecast this week. That's going to be the end of it here. Be sure to go check out Vince. He's a YouTuber, Travel Sticks. I'll leave his link in the description of the YouTube video when I upload this VOD. And tune in for the one next month, which will be good because it's one of my Lorecasts. That's all I got to say.
But first of all, you know, it's thank you for inviting me to do this Lorecast. Second, it's clear that all of the lore and I mean, if you're going to like take all of these Lorecasts After a
Yeah.
while, I'm sure you're gonna find connections between all of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, indeed check out my YouTube channel. I do travel and food mostly, and a bit of kendo sports. And also, I know next month's Lorecast is going to be interesting because I've heard tidbits about what is going to be discussed. So I will definitely be tuning in.
Well, thank you very much for coming along. Thanks to everyone who has watched. The stream will continue shortly. Just it won't be a Lorecast stream when I put it back up. But yeah, be sure to go check out the VOD on YouTube when it's uploaded. Thanks all for coming by, and I will see you next month for the next Lorecast. Goodbye, everyone.